Yo, we're back with another mock draft, our first of the 2026 NBA draft cycle, and we are kicking it off with a way too early lottery mock. For the order, I've just taken Tankathon's current set order. I don't fully agree with it, but I could certainly see several of these being the case, and quite frankly, I just don't want to mess with creating my own order. It takes too much time, so if you want to complain about how your team is actually going to win the title next year and won't finish in the lottery, take it up with Tankathon. Also, my usual way too early disclaimer, projecting the NBA draft nearly a full calendar year away is literally impossible. None of this will end up being the case for both players and teams, but it's also a fun one to look back on. If you need a good laugh, I highly recommend any of my other way too early mocks. And without further ado, this is my first 26 NBA mock draft. Kicking off the mock are the Utah Jazz, certainly a team I think will be in contention for the #1 pick. Though I'd expect the Wizards and Nets to be worse on paper, and they'll take who is currently probably my top prospect by just a hair in AJ Dybantsa. At 6'9", Dybantsa is a part of this essential top 3 alongside Darryn Peterson and Cam Boozer, who experts are fairly split on at the moment. I'd say the consensus probably leans Peterson right now, followed closely by Dybantsa, with Boozer being good enough to remain in the conversation. I myself think the NBA is still a wings league. Only 3 of the last 14 #1 picks have been guards, and despite Peterson's polish, I still lean NBA decision makers, being somewhat enamored by the pure upside of a 6'9" forward in Dybantsa. He'll be set to play his upcoming collegiate season with BYU, should have the reins to the offense having come in on an all-time NIL deal, and I'd expect him to thrive at all 3 levels with great athleticism, coordination, fluidity, elite footwork, and most importantly, the ball handling that's helped so many wings to stardom in the NBA. His decision making and defensive impact are things to watch for, but I'd expect Dybantsa to light up his lone season with BYU. He played a high school season at Utah Prep, will play for BYU, and I think the Jazz would love to swing on one of the more talented prospects in this class who already has ties to Utah. Next up is incoming Kansas guard Darryn Peterson, who many expect to be one of the best guard prospects we've seen in the last decade, and rightfully so after watching the tape. He stands at 6'5" and has some of the most pure polish, not from just a guard perspective, but any preps prospect in general that I've seen. Creation ability at the 2 guard, incredible pace, great overall tools that don't necessarily detract from his overall feel for the game. Peterson will score at all 3 levels. He will be a defensive plus. He can hone his passing and playmaking at Kansas. I truly expect him to have a monster season with the Jayhawks, and it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if multiple teams had him #1 on draft night. The Wizards, perhaps more than any other team, could certainly use a prospect like that. They just gambled on Trey Johnson, a guard I was on record really loving, but a centrifugal creation piece to plug in alongside him, Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, and more could finally get the ball rolling in Washington. At #3 is a player certainly not to be overshadowed by the other 2, Duke forward Cam Boozer, son of 2-time All-Star Carlos Boozer. At 6'9", Boozer's been an overpowering physical force through Prep's play, cementing himself with interior scoring, post and full court playmaking, and defensive versatility. He's physically NBA ready and should be able to produce efficiently and impactfully in his lone season at Duke. As it stands now, I think Boozer's game lends itself slightly less to the NBA than the other 2, but A, I'll be interested to see the face-up game and foul drawing at the collegiate level, and B, every NBA team could still use a player like this in the front court. The Brooklyn Nets especially could, seeing as they just gambled on 4 handler bets and will need talent in general. 4 is really where things start to open up. I believe the consensus feels fairly strongly about Tennessee wing Nate Ament here. I think he'll be a little more project-y than anticipated, so I've gone with NBL forward Kareem Lopez. At still 18, Lopez already has a full year of NBA play with the New Zealand Breakers under his belt, having averaged 9.6 points on 45% shooting, with 4.7 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and 1 block per game across 23 minutes. He's a 6'9" combo forward capable of scoring on the interior with strength and handling, and providing some nice defensive versatility with his tools. He doesn't yet have a stellar perimeter game, but certainly has the bones to improve, having shot slightly over 30% from 3. As an aside, I really don't expect the Charlotte Hornets to be this bad next season, but for the sake of continuity, we'll stick with Tankathon here, and I think a fun combo forward would be a nice pick for Charlotte. At number 5, we have who is sure to be a polarizing prospect for the next year, Baylor wing/forward Tunde Yesufu, who will look to pick up where VJ Edgecombe left off. At about 6'6", Yesufu is set to be one of the more athletic and tools-driven players in the class, offering speed, verticality, power, motor, and more in a pro-ready frame. Right now, all of that lends itself best to defense, which projects to be pretty great at the collegiate level. Offensively, Yesufu is somewhat of a work in progress, but I can't help but feel there's plenty worth betting on, enough that I've ranked him here within the top 5. Yesufu fits with the Blazers' defensive-minded identity well, and offers another wing that they can roll out between talented guards and bigs, but this is another team I wouldn't totally expect to be in the top 5 without some lottery luck. At number 6 is the now rebuilding Chicago Bulls taking a shot on Nate Ament, who will play for Rick Barnes at Tennessee next season. Ament is a wing with ball handling and shot making him one of the more polarizing bets in this class, as I touched on. There's flashes of legitimate stardom strewn across his game, but far too many lapses on both ends to make him a sure thing at the moment. He perhaps has more to submit than anyone else at the college level next season, either placing himself in that top tier or seeing his floor somewhat fall out from under him. Regardless, he has talent and should be able to carve out a role with the Vols. I think Ament stylistically fits into what Chicago has done the last few seasons, gambling on these rangy perimeter wings with some versatility and ball skills. At number 7 is Jaden Quaintance, who despite turning 18 in July has already played an entire season of college basketball with Arizona State. He suffered a torn ACL in February, adding questions to his upcoming season with Kentucky, but he was able to add 9.4 points, 7.9 rebounds, 1.1 steals, and a ridiculous 2.6 blocks across just 24 games. He's a 6'9" big who certainly shies more towards a traditional game, but there's inklings of modernity spread throughout, and enough overall impact on both ends regardless. His fit with the current Grizzlies would be somewhat murky, but I'd expect changes to the team at some point. Plus, they have another lottery pick here, seeing as this is the Phoenix Suns pick initially, so they're really just covering their positional bases here. Just our second guard on the list so far, and our first true point guard, Michael Brown Jr., is among the more interesting prospects in the class, set to play his upcoming season with Louisville. He's a shifty, skill-driven handler, scoring, playmaking, and generally creating perhaps better than any other player in the class. He stands at 6'3", but if he can prove the scoring efficiency and passing is real with the Cardinals, he'll be one of the top guard options in general. Having traded star guard De'Aaron Fox, the Kings could especially use a player like this, who they could develop as their floor general of the future. At number 9, we have the Atlanta Hawks picking via the acquired Pelicans first, taking a shot on 6'9" combo forward Koa Pete, who will play for Arizona next season. Pete is pretty highly touted, offering a pretty mature post-game featured around finishing and shot blocking, with a pretty buildable perimeter game with improving shooting and ball handling. He could end up one of the top prospects in the class, or a faller based on his Arizona opportunity, with how he translates physically and his outside numbers being the variables. Regardless, adding another versatile forward to the mix, one with slightly more interior mentality, would be a worthy gamble for the Atlanta Hawks, who are quietly building a really good roster. At number 10, we have the Miami Heat using their first top 10 pick in some time on wing Isaiah Harwell, a consensus 5-star set to help Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars next season. At a reported 6'6" with a 6'9" wingspan, Harwell projects to be somewhat of a role player both at Houston and in the NBA long term, with a buttery smooth perimeter shot and the link to thrive in other areas. But his handle could allude to more, and it's ultimately why I've landed on him in my preseason top 10 here. The Heat just recently took a point guard prospect in Kasparas Yakuchonis. Here, they would give him a future running mate who can shoot threes all day long, slash, and hopefully provide some decent defense too. At number 11 is the Toronto Raptors, staying true to form even in the post-Masai era in taking one of the toolsiest players in the class in Chris Senac Jr. He stands at 6'10" with a reported 7'3" wingspan, offering a potentially high upside stretch 5 with some bounce, interior chops, and perimeter flash. He should find himself in a great defensive scheme with Houston and should have just enough offense to earn top 10 looks next draft. They will certainly need to prove a few things both inside and out. Toronto still only has one NBA level center on the roster in Jakob Poeltl, so chancing a youthful center who could offer a more modern look wouldn't be a bad idea for the Raptors. At number 12 is the Memphis Grizzlies, this time selecting via their own pick and taking a shot on a player I thought would have a little more draft buzz last season, but will instead go the college route in Neoclis Avdalas. Avdalas is a jumbo Greek guard standing at 6'9" with a skill-driven game featured around scoring and shot making. He hovered around double-digit scoring on great splits in a pro league last season, and the tape simply feels too good for me to count him out as a potential lottery bid, as you'll see. Again, the Grizzlies have a fairly built out roster, but here they gamble on some star power in adding Abdallas as a potentially high ceiling guard that they could develop in the near future. At number 13 is the Eastern Conference winning Pacers, who will of course be without Tyrese Halliburton next season, and here they take a shot on Melbourne's Dash Daniels. Of course, the brother of Dyson Daniels, Dash offers a fairly similar package. He's a defensive-minded combo guard, albeit slightly smaller, but one who should be able to add some secondary playmaking and slashing like Dyson. He'll play out a season with Melbourne in the NBL, and it could be a slight uphill battle to earn playing time, though his three-point shot should be a helpful weapon in getting him on court. In Daniels, Indiana would add another keen handler and decision maker that they could backfill their roster with, continuing to prioritize transition play and stingy defense. Capping off our mock draft is our first true returnee, Iowa guard Bennett Sturtz, and here he's drafted by the San Antonio Spurs. A 6'4" guard, Sturtz was among the most impactful players in the country last season, pouring on over 19 points, 5.7 assists, and 2 steals per game for Drake, earning the Larry Bird Player of the Year award in the process. He's now followed head coach Ben McCollum to Iowa and is likely to be one of the best players in the country there. The Spurs obviously have a plethora of talented guards, but Sturtz would be a welcome addition that could hopefully hit the ground running, adding both point and shooting guard skills alongside Victor Wembanyama. He's an especially potent scorer everywhere, but his 40% three-point shooting on great volume would be pretty timeless in the San Antonio core.